Okay, 10C, consider motion to approve a purchase agreement between MTRE Red Wing, Minnesota LLC, Bauer Built, and the City of Red Wing. Do we need an overview on this? Do we want an overview on this? We had one person sign up for this. George?
I promise this will be the last time tonight.
Okay, you're fine, you're fine.
Okay, my question is just how much property does the city need to control for future development? We have acres out on the Highway 19, the old Central Research, and other properties around town. Each time you purchase a property, it goes off the tax roll, which again raises, the pie keeps getting smaller. And you know, I'm for development, but I think it should be the developer driven, not the city or port authority driven. Let them come for help if needed. Once again, you could possibly lease the old city car wash. I see that as coming up later on in the agenda. Site for a staging area and parking next year for reconstruction of Old West Main. This would save the taxpayers some money. Thank you for your consideration and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. Okay. What would you like to do?
Well,
Does everybody want to hear from staff on this one? I mean, we've all heard it, but
sure, if you want to.
well, I think we should spend about 5 minutes on the reasoning behind buying this building, because, you know, I've heard the same thing. I'll let you do your presentation first, because you'll probably answer most of what I'm going to say.
Okay. So the process of looking at this property has gone on for about 6 months now. Back in the middle of May, staff was made aware that the property was vacated and was going to be put on the market for sale. There was some discussion at the Port Authority meeting about interest in that site as a future redevelopment opportunity, with the city and or port being a catalyst in helping to make that happen. The Bauer Built had an independent appraisal done. The city had commissioned another independent appraisal. The offer before you this evening is about in the middle of those two numbers, at that $450,000 number. And so there, as was mentioned, there's a desire to look at additional parking opportunities that this site may provide, both on the street in dealing with some closures of access onto that property, in the back of the property, in additional public right-of-way or alley, some people call it, and possibly a future small public parking lot on that lot itself. So there's the potential to maybe add maybe 30 additional parking stalls that are very important in that area. But I think even more importantly is the redevelopment potential of that site as very key location in the Old West Main area. As you approved earlier this evening, it's in close proximity to the potential future bridge landing, pedestrian bridge landing across the street. And so there are a number of good reasons to look at this in terms of the potential opportunities here. And it's not that the city or the port has to be a lead in that opportunity, but in some cases that does make sense. So I think the decision before you this evening is whether you believe that to be true. And And so the purchase agreement is a 60-day window in which we would complete a phase one. I've got somebody ready to go on that. They told me it could be completed within two to 3 week period. But we have a contingency here to investigate that property further. Whether the phase one requires or strongly recommends a phase two, I don't know yet, but that could be a possibility as well. But for any reason that the city believes through its investigation that it's not worth purchasing because of whatever comes out of that, we have the ability to terminate the purchase agreement. It's our decision to make. Just the last thing, the amendment that came before you today is one where obviously at closing personal property needs to be removed, but there are other vehicles that have been parked on this site, so our attorney recommended adding some language regarding the removal of vehicles from the property.
Anybody have any questions for Dan? Personally, I think this is in more ways than one. I think the city should purchase this property. It's going to be much easier for parking and to keep the business. We did similar things where we added parking, or showed parking stalls when we did the Main Street. That was tough on our businesses. When we do Old West Main Street, and that's going to happen next year, parking is going to be at an even worse premium than it is right now. If we have this, we can have some off-street parking to keep those businesses functioning in the short term. In the long term, I would like to see the city council and the Port Authority look at some type of retail redevelopment, but I definitely don't want to sit on this property very long. I'd like it back on the tax rolls fairly soon. So, but while we've got a whole year to discuss this and try to figure out exactly what needs to go in there, I've talked to 2 people now that would be interested after the Old West Main Street is done in purchasing that building. Okay, so we can do the straightening out and get the extra parking in the back and stuff, and we may want to do that. Actually, I would encourage that to get it back on the tax rolls, because some of their ideas are pretty good. So, but anyway, in the short term, I think it's the right thing to do, and so I plan on supporting this project for those reasons.
I think one of the concepts here is that we may need to look at, if we're going to redevelop it, and redevelop it in ways and try to help, guide the Old West Main kind of redevelopment plan. If we want to guide that, we may have to consider rezoning that property, because that would be part of what would need to be looked at. And so, I think, I completely agree with Dean that we need to control that property in the short term for the parking. I've heard from businesses and owners down there, they're vitally concerned about parking in that area. And I think we need the long-term parking as well. And I agree that we need to turn it over quickly. I also know that we want to change we want to see more destination business down there, and grow that and have that grow. I've talked to business owners who believe it will grow down there, and they already see it happening. And as Dean said, there are people who are probably very interested already. So I think this is an opportunity. I don't think it's going to sit on in our hands very long. I think even if we were in the position of not finding a redevelopment partner that seemed, we just couldn't find anything, which I don't think will happen. But if we should be in that position, I think we could probably just flip the property anyways. So I, fully support it. Not only that, it's not directly coming from the out of the taxpayers, because it is money that we have already put aside for the Old West Main Redevelopment Fund. And so it's not coming into the new, budget cycle. It's money we've already put aside for exactly these kinds of issues where we see an opportunity, we have plans, these plans are long-term, but when new property comes up, you have a short window to be able to see if you want to, do something. I think this is a good one. That, unless anyone else is going to say something.
You said it.
Yeah, that. I feel like
You did a good job.
I feel like what both of you guys said.
Dean did it. I agreed with him.
And I'll agree with that. I mean, obviously, that parcel number 2 in the back there by that right of way, I think is a critical piece to help with the flow of traffic. We've talked about the possibility of a bike trail or bike path, or the necessity for parking back there. So I think that that's paramount that we do own that. And for the reasons that you guys both said, I think, Dean, you really hit the nail on the head. Talking about what construction does to local businesses, and I think that we owe it to those businesses as much as we can. We try to accommodate them the best we can, and this is an opportunity that we have to provide some of that additional parking needs when they're doing that construction. And then I think there are a lot of ideas working with both the city and the port for how we can revitalize that and make it a thriving Old West Main corridor, which is a benefit to our entire community, which does put it back, as you said, back on the tax property as a thriving business. And I do believe that business supports business. You become a destination. In this case, I don't think that you're adding competition. You're adding more of that destination when we can do that. So I think you said it really well, Evan, about encumbering some of these funds so that when there is an opportunity to reinvest in our community, we can jump on it. And that's what I think this is for us. So,
just as a quick comment, I found it very useful when the second person that was talking to me about this piece of property, that they would like to deal with the city. They emphasized after Old West Main Street and the bridge is done. That was the very first words out of their mouth. We'd like to deal with it afterwards.
Sure.
That also encouraged me, because that way I don't believe that we're going to be having to sit on this property, and I think basically we'll get our money back out of it. Plus we'll get a good product with a lot of input from the city and the Port Authority. Excuse me. So therefore I think, I do agree that this is a good project.
I would like to, I'd like to add that I think this, the Port Authority put in place a new committee this year called Strategic Implementation Committee. It's tasked with looking at various things. It's helped, for example, it took the first look at this demolition contract. I think this is a good place to kind of help to design some kind of redevelopment guidelines for this property, especially why we have this window that you're talking about, why we're in the construction phase, to get some feedback. And however the city council wants to see that relationship there, I'm not sure what what you'd like, but I think that is the good natural place for this to rest while we figure out how to redevelop this property.
Well, that's my thinking is that what we talked about before is that we would, let's face it, the Port Authorities are economic development arm. This would be a good project for them to work on, and I think it would, they do good work.
Well, with that,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry,
No, you're
jumping
fine.
the gun a little bit, but I'll make a motion to approve the purchase agreement between MTRE Red Wing, MN LLC, and the City of Red Wing.
Motion by Evan,
I'll second.
second by Becky. Any further discussion? John?
Yes, finally.
Yep.
Again, I'm going to be a negative on this vote as well, but I'm glad to hear that I still have the very best interest of the city at heart. And I'm very glad to see that you have environmental conditions on it, because just prior use is a big deal with this. I just want to clarify, is there a requirement that a real estate purchase, that if we have a comprehensive plan, go through a planning commission before it comes to city council?
I'm not sure if it's been before. I think it's not final until the planning
Until
commission.
after it's gone through.
So go through the planning commission after this? Okay.
It'll go after this.
I'm good to go.
Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, motion carries.